Hello, 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 and welcome to the latest HR on the Offensive live stream that we go and do every single Thursday. I'm Chris Howard from Lace Partners, and I'm joined by Kathy Akritopoulos. And Kathy, today we're going to talk election and new Labour government and all the good things and the implications on HR, aren't we?
We are. We're going to try and keep that within our sort of 10, 15-minute slot, right? Which is almost impossible, Chris, but we'll do our best.
We are going to do our best. We are going to do our best. Now, some caveat time, of course. Lace Partners, we are a HR consultancy. We support businesses with their things like HR strategy, employee experience, HR tech projects, payroll consultancy, all that type of good stuff. However, what we are not is lawyers. And so one of the things that I will say about this, because I think this is quite an interesting one, Kathy, and I'll just get you to kind of almost do a scene setting if we just kick this off on for today's live stream. As I said, we're not lawyers, and so we haven't gone into the granular detail of policy wording and detail that the Labour government are talking about. I mean, there's lots of things that are out there around, are they going to reform IR35? Are we going to see a rise in employment tribunal claims? And, Labour themselves have talked about this being the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. I don't think we want to go into too much detail in 5-10 minutes, but just as a scene setting exercise, are you okay to just talk to our lovely watchers of this this live stream, or if you're watching it afterwards, of course, then just video, just a little bit around what we kind of heard, and we talked about it a little bit in our election special that we did, so you can access that. I mean, that was written a few weeks ago now, so it was pre-election, but just tell our listeners, our watchers, a little bit around some of those sort of top line bits that have been talked about that Labour are going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to start with, Chris, it's probably worth emphasising that we are very focused, obviously, on the new Labour government in the UK, but the UK is just one of 64 countries globally this year that is going through an election. It's a very election-heavy year. That's half the population of the world are in countries that are going through elections this year. Not least the looming US election towards the back end of this year as well. So there's a lot of change going on. And as a global CPO or an international HR leader, clearly staying on top of what's happening is key, and working through your geographical team of HR leaders to stay on top of the implications in each of the geographies you're operating. But, in broad terms, in terms of what's coming and what has already been communicated, it's quite interesting, right, from a Labour government point of view. We have a government now that is claiming to be pro-worker and pro-business. And I'm quite intrigued to see how that tension shapes up over the coming months. We're expecting to hear more about the 100-day plan imminently. The King's speech is tomorrow in government. That's likely to include a number of elements of that 100-day plan, but also in particular, it's likely to mention the positioning on enhancing workers' rights. So if we talk maybe more about that aspect today, and just to give a whistle-stop tour, we are expecting there to be a simplification of employment status, where we're going from 3 tiers to 2 tiers, where the employee and worker band get merged into one versus self-employed. And that will bring a lot of change around protection levels for workers who now come under the employee type benefits, which includes things like parental leave, redundancy, statutory sick pay, the right to request flexible working. So depending on how you classify your workforce and which bands they fall in, then you may well find a lot of your workforce may actually slip into having more protection under that than they currently have. Another big change is around day one protection, day one of employment. And what does that really mean? It means that actually from day one of employment, a big change is that you can be protected against unfair dismissal, whereas currently it's 2 years right before that kicks in. I'm quite intrigued to see what that means as to how we manage probation clauses and how those might get invoked. But that is a big change, right, in terms of day one protection. Another change is over the no fire and rehire policy, which is obviously something that's been in the press over the last few years, certainly post-COVID, as workforces were reshaping, particularly in the travel industry. But ultimately, that there will be an absolute ban on that. We're expecting 0 hours contracts, another one that's been in the headlines a lot, around an outright ban potentially in that space, but certainly someone who's working on 0 hours at the moment, who's working more regular hours over 12 weeks, may well be able to expect to move to a regular contract as opposed to 0 hours. The right to switch off, that one is quite interesting, right? To talk about that one in a bit more detail. We could probably do a whole live stream just on that.
I
But
reckon so, yeah.
in Ireland and Belgium, this is already in place. What does that really mean? The ability to say, actually, I'm not going to be penalised if I don't read my emails or I don't get in touch with work, and I shouldn't expect contact from work outside hours. That's probably going to be more of a code of practice, we expect, rather than legislation. And then also we're expecting some change to minimum wage levels and age bands within that to reflect cost of living, particularly for younger workers. So those are sort of the legislative or employee rights elements. We're also expecting a skills bill, which is beyond that, right, in terms of abolishing the apprenticeship levy and maybe coming in with a growth and skills levy instead. So a big focus on skills. That's linking into business growth, productivity angle as well, which obviously is a big part of the element of where Rachel Reeves is coming from being pro-business. So
Yeah.
a lot of change is what we're expecting, Chris, in summary.
Yeah, a lot of change. It's quite an interesting one. And just as a little shameless lace plug here, we are about to, in the next couple of weeks, be launching our own Becoming Skills Powered campaign. If you go onto our website on the homepage, as a survey, we're just asking as many people to fill in some information as possible, because it's a big topic at the moment, skills. How do we look for our next generation of workers? Not just that, but how do we get skills to gear us up for the future? But that's going to be a stream for another day, where I think we'll delve into some of the specifics around that campaign as we launch it and when we launch it. But let's focus back into, so we've just got a new government. They've just launched this, they've got this 100-day plan, if you like. But as a HR consultancy, obviously what we're most interested in is HR. So what if I'm a HR person sitting right now? You've just reeled off a lot of change. Is there anything specific that people that we talk to, our customers, but also not just our customers, just organizations of different sizes, they should be almost zoning in on?
Yeah, I mean, look, Labour are positioning this as about being a new deal for working people to make work pay, right? I think for me, there's an opportunity here, I guess, for HR at a practical, if maybe we do a practical first, Chris, and then maybe on to the opportunity. But look, obviously, as HR leaders, as CPOs, we need to stay close about what's coming. So making the most of any relationship you've got with your whoever is your employment law advisor, whether that's in-house or external firm. Make sure you're getting the briefings, make sure you know what's coming, that you're thinking through in advance. I guess if you're in HR, what do you need to be thinking about? I do think there's a priority here around, if it isn't already underway, then assessing your level of exposure, your level of change that this will mean for your workforce, both now and in the future, and maybe take some scenario planning approach to that, right? So if this is what comes in, if this is the intent, what does that mean for my workforce? What does that mean for our business? What is our level of risk, our level of change, the cost and benefits of the change that's coming in? So taking more of a business case approach to this, I think, would be a great way to think it through. And linked to that is, from a policy point of view, a policy practice ways of working, what would need to be different and how would we affect that change? So starting to think through the main changes that are likely to be, started to be talked about in practice tomorrow, but also beyond that with the 100-day plan and more clarity that will come beyond that again. What does that actually mean in practice for us as a business? I think a major part of this will be the onus on the HR function, a bit like in COVID, really, of making sure that we've got accurate information on our employee base to know who is impacted. And when you are doing that impact assessment, to understand what it really means and how much that may require change, what that change may look like in terms of policy, but also cost, and also the benefits that may be for the individuals, but also the organisation overall. So getting your data cleaned up and ready, I think, is really important. But I do think, coming back to this new deal language, right, this makes me automatically think about the deal between a business and its employees, the employee value proposition. So what is your promise to your employees and how are you delivering on that deal? This is a new deal. So it's an opportunity here, I think, for HR leaders to say, for what we think may be coming, how can we use that as maybe a prompt or a catalyst to think about our own broader employee value proposition and how we can take these changes and integrate them into maybe a broader view of what that value proposition needs to be. And see this as an opportunity to revamp your own deal to your workforce. So I think that, to me, is probably something that I would focus on as a CHRO or a CPO in that role, to see that as an opportunity.
Yeah, I really like the way that you've kind of positioned that, really, because then it's almost like this is change that you don't just have to be reactive. It's not just, oh, there's a whole load of new policies that we're going to be legislatively hauled over hot coals over, or we're going to have to change our ways of working. And that's the reactive kind of approach. There's inevitably a part of that. Then there's also kind of that proactive side about, okay, well, how can we use this to our advantage as HR professionals? We're just on about 10 minutes, so we're running short on time. Was there any kind of final sort of points that you wanted to bring out about what how HR could be impacted, or anything, I guess, as a final takeaway? Is there any one big thing that I can take away? I'm going to do mine again, which is if you want to have a look at this, if you want to have a look at this, you can just find out about the white paper that we've put together on our website. I've just put the URL on screen, so you can just access that. Now, caveats aside, there's some stuff in there, obviously, which was written pre the new government, but I think a lot of us kind of had an idea that we thought it might be a Labour government. So there's interesting points and there's an interesting checklist in there that still remains relevant at the moment. So you can check that one out on our website as well. But Kathy, just any final bits before we wrap up today?
Yeah, and I think, that ultimately, a big message from Labour has been around strengthening union rights through this change. Personally, I think this is an opportunity for HR leaders to think about their contemporary approach, I guess, to employee relations, and broadening that piece around how do we listen, engage, and action plan around what our employees really feel. So I think it's a good opportunity, not just with formal union environments where those exist, or works councils, but actually to think more generally around contemporary employee relations and how you can set up those engagement and listening channels so that you are on the front foot, you are taking a proactive approach to understanding how people feel, and that will set you up well to both communicating any changes coming out of this and understanding the impact that they're having. So I think for me, it's that engagement and listening strategy linking into your broader employee relations piece that I think is going to be really important, but definitely getting cracking with that impact assessment just to really understand what it means for you and your organisation.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. So if you want to have a chat with us, we're always happy to talk about this sort of stuff, certainly when it comes to impact assessment, when it comes to engaging your workforce. Kathy talked about New Deal there, and also your deal, the deal that you put to your employees through your employee value proposition. So we've got some stuff that we've written about that, which is on the Lace Partners website. Again, just go to the insights section and you can find out all of that information. But I guess from myself and from Kathy, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Always good.
Always good to have a chat. Hopefully we're going to catch you next time on the HR on the Offensive live stream. Thank you very much for joining us, and bye-bye.